Well, yeah, I wanted to just talk about something you said that was really interesting because we've talked in the past about moral atrocities that occurred in the past that were considered normal. And then in hindsight, you look back and they're obviously bad. But what we haven't talked about is health things. So back in the day, cigarettes, everyone smoked them. Doctors were like, yeah, these are cool. And today you look back, you go, cigarettes, how could you be so dumb, right? Cigarettes are obviously bad for you. And I think sticking with the trend of we're not at the apex of human morality, we're not at the apex of human health understanding. What are we doing today that in 100 years, people are just going to look back and go, wow, what morons that they were doing this every single day.
I'm going to put my phone over here while I...
So I was wondering, so I have some obvious one is vaping, right? Oh, cigarettes are bad, but inhaling vaping smoke is not. This seems to me to be something that we'll come to realize was just didn't have enough research on. I think processed food is one that we didn't think about for a long time and then has come out that it links pretty heavily to cancer and heart disease. So
can I pause real quick? Just to sort of like, because we did discuss this, and I think this is one thing that's left out. This is again from Daniel Schmachtenberger. And what he talks about is how after decades of study on cigarettes, we saw that at the end of people's lives, they tended to get more lung cancer.
Yeah.
And after decades of study of sugar, we saw that it can clog your arteries, cause heart failure. And then so what we did was turn around and invent vaping yesterday and invent what are the sugar substitutes? Erythritol. And there's no evidence that those things cause any problems.
Right.
But of course, so we can say zero sugar or filtered vapes and all this kind of stuff.
You need about 50 years of data.
No nicotine in your Zyn or it's pure nicotine in your Zyn or no tobacco in your Zyn, whatever it is, with the belief that, because it doesn't have the same thing. And everybody kind of knows, if they're being honest and they really think about it, that, you need 50 years to do it. And it's very, very similar. So that's why you're saying vaping processed foods, because now we're going to learn that all of the ingredients that aren't sugar but are this long have the same effects, if not worse ones, in 50 years.
Yeah. But there was a couple I thought could be the case. Cell phones, Bluetooth devices, maybe just social media, because it doesn't cause cancer, but maybe the dopamine things cause depression, cause anxiety, chronic depression, chronic society-wide anxiety. I don't know what they are, but it's just interesting to think there's something that we do today that's killing us or making us miserable. And we are going to look back on it in 60 years and know, but we just don't know what it is.
I think it's likely to be stressing about global politics for many people.
Sure.
So this is a sample size that is obviously anecdotal. I just watched one video. It had 3 centenarians in it, but I did think it was anecdotally interesting. They just talk about what's life, at 100. And one woman says, I've always been so lucky. She was talking about how lucky she is. And she then casually mentions later, she's like, it was tough when my dad was a prisoner of war. And when my first 2 daughters died, the twins, that was the most devastating part of my life. It's like, wait,
wow,
lucky?
Yeah.
But to have a life and see, to assess it positively, despite what happens, and there were 3 of them, and they all smiled a lot, and they all cracked themselves up, and they were light and laughy and thought that they were blessed, despite just random. Sounds like my life with the one guy. What did he say? It was funny. I have had an easy life, even in the war. It was just this dude was in the RAF in World War II.
Yeah.
What, did he not see action? I sincerely doubt it. None of his friends died? I doubt it. So, but just to assess things, and maybe this came at the end of his life. But
I actually think that. Sorry, go ahead.
It was interesting to see how light, smiley, grateful, and optimistic people who make it to 100 are.
Yeah.
That was what I took.
I think that entitlement is something that's very common and probably very detrimental. The idea that you are owed a job that you love, that makes you happy every day, and enough money to buy everything that you could possibly want, and the best designer brands, no matter what your financial situation is, you should have the Yeezys or the Rolex. That's, I think, a new thing. I don't think that that's how people felt post Great Depression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people were just happy to have jobs. And we talked about this before in the cycles, and it's no one's fault. This is kind of the predictable nature of long-term economic cycles, but it is just something that I think it's not just bad for society, it's bad for you.
Yeah.
when you're upset that every single thing isn't exactly as you want all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus this guy who says, yeah, well, I went to war. It's not what I would have liked to do, but I survived it. Did my friend die? They did. I wouldn't have liked for that to happen, but another friend lived. That perspective is probably huge for mental health, happiness, longevity.
Dude, so the corollary to that I felt as I was watching this is it made me realize that I have felt shame at the good things in my life because the culture that we live in is to put forward, celebrate, give speaking rights to difficulties. You know, like if something has been hard or difficult, you are a more valued voice. And so it is, I think without me having thought about it, made me less likely. And simple things like I'll be like, look, I was lucky. And it's like, my hands go up. Like, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't get beat when I was little. I'm so sorry. As opposed to the way that he discussed it, these guys, and they did have tough lives where they were so proud of the good things in their life. But they still had compassion. It wasn't, they recognized that things were worse than that. But the idea of this reaction to having had fortunate things makes you less likely to recognize, talk about, and appreciate the fortunate things for what they are. But all three of them were almost braggy. It's at least in 2021, it struck me as braggy that the way that they talked about the positive things in their life. Oh, what a wonderful husband and a perfect marriage that we had. And you would never say that to you. Well, we have our problems, obviously. You have to constantly acknowledge that things aren't so good so that you can fit in with what feels like a society that is increasingly not just including victims, but celebrating them above a non-victim, if that makes sense. Does it?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think it varies person to person because I can also think of someone so you feel fortunate for your middle class upbringing, and when talking to people, you feel guilty about it. I know other people who are born upper class, and they just genuinely seem to feel like their lot in life was not beneficial to them. They feel very self-made, and they're also not grateful, I guess. But it's not in the hand throwing up way. They're like, well, yeah, I got all that, but I'm still me. I made me. Yeah, I'm the reason I'm successful. It'd be stupid to credit anything else. So they almost have the opposite. So I think this one just varies person to person.
Yeah, I guess. And I think this is one of the things that religion, even though I don't believe in the truth claims of it, gets right, which is a sense that you're being looked out for, which causes you to focus on the way that things have broken in the right direction as opposed to in the wrong direction. And they all did mention something about having been lucky or things were easy, like something outside of my control was good in my life. And I think that's I bet you that makes you feel really good about life and keeps your stress down and helps you live longer. Yeah. To just be like, something out there is looking out for me because look, Are
you saying that having media that constantly enrages us is bad for us?
Yes. I think it makes me and other people forget that a totally valid perspective is that something's looking out for you. And you can be reminded of that when you're like, look, of all the sperm that could have got there, like you landed and like.
Well, yeah, we've even talked about this. Even beyond that, there's people who their quality of life, just in terms of how often they get to eat and the fact that they have access to any technology at all, puts them in the top 0.00001% luckiest people in the world. But that's not how humans operate. We look around, right? So if you're doing poorly relative to your society, you feel badly. Even though someone with your exact set of circumstances, but from 1,000 years ago, would feel like they had the luckiest life in the world. Yeah. I don't know what to do about that, but that is.
We've discussed it. And it's that the comparative instinct is healthy within a community because if somebody else has something, it's a strong indicator that you could do that. But the comparative instinct with Instagram and filters and a global community is you can't have that. That body's not real. It doesn't exist. The happiness that they're displaying is completely performative. And living in LA.
They don't own this jet. They're actually just in a studio that they rented that's a photo studio that looks like a private jet.
But in tribal area, if you saw some guy with a jet, it's like, there's probably more where that came from. Sure. I could go get one of those and go places. It is funny living in LA because we work out on a rooftop due to COVID. And I guess there's a spot in a garage that is a influencer area. There's also an influencer area in the alley by where I live. And you constantly see the fakest moments on camera. There's this like smirking and like not seeing the camera. And then as soon as it's done, frown, look at it. Okay, I'll do it again. And it's just so obviously fake. It adds a degree of color that you don't realize if you're not an influencer territory like we are here.
Any that's other a good point, actually. If you're from a city that doesn't have a lot of influencers, or you're from a suburb, I guess you never really get to see behind the curtain. Because once you see behind the curtain, it's so Instagram loses all of its allure and appeal. Every time you see a beautiful person posing at the beach, you just know that before and after they were frowning.
Well, you can also imagine what it took to get that angle. So you'll see a lot of the guys, the boyfriends, like laying on the ground, like trying to get that low angle shot.
So good, so funny.
So you can just imagine the camera, and I think the same thing occurs. WandaVision has an interesting moment where the show is set as it's a variety of different decades television shows, but at one point you see the cameras. And I think that, similarly, a lot of people didn't realize that those shows were just cutouts of houses. Mm-hmm. And if you step back, it's totally fake. And the same thing with Avengers is like, if it's not on camera, it's not there.
Yeah.
This place is entirely artificial. I watched a video of a guy who was talking about the body transformations that they go through, and the fact that in Captain America, we all know that what was his name? Chris Evans was digitally made to look smaller, but we never question if he was digitally made to look larger.
Yeah.
At any point. It's just like, maybe not. He was certainly oiled beyond all thing, and he got his pump on right before, and they took a low angle shot. And it's interesting. It was just a funny moment. I was like, never occurred to me that they might have just pumped him up because they shrunk him down for the first 30 minutes.
Sure. Or even when you find out their sizes. I mean, I thought Chris Hemsworth was 6'5", 250 pounds. Mm-hmm. Freak of nature. He's still big. He's 6'2", 220.
He's 6'3".
I know people that size.
Yeah.
And it's great. He's a good looking muscle guy. This isn't to take away from him.
He's a great looking guy, dude.
I know.
He's ridiculous.
I'm just saying when you see it on camera, you think he's what a perfect casting. He's a god. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could see him walking down the beach holding a surfboard, and you would just go, that's a good looking guy amongst all the people that look like this in Australia or LA.
Yeah.
But
he's special, dude. I mean that sincerely.
He is, because he's got a really good personality.
Yeah. Or interviews well. Who knows? Again, those are who knows what goes on behind the camera.
True. Could beat his wife.
Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.